Welcome in, folks, to another episode of What's Bruin, brought to you by our friends over at Ice Shaker. Check them out at iceshaker.com. Great shaker bottle here. They got contracts with the NHL, so go and get one of our Boston Bruins. I am your host, joined by my co-host. I'm Chris. That is Dom. Dom, it's been about a week. How you doing?
Not too bad, Chris. Little tired watching some hockey here, even though it's just an exhibition game. Ready to talk some Bruins.
Well, the good news is we've had two games since the Christmas break. The bad news is we've had two games since the Christmas break. So,
Well, let's not forget the Washington game. It was in
well,
there
yeah, the
since July.
Washington game. Yeah, that was, I think, the night after our last show. So, where do you want to start now that they're back from break? We can start with the games. Let's see. Kevin says he's only here so that you don't yell at him. Oz asks the question, what's the point of what? I'm not sure. Oz, if you can finish the thought, that'd be great. We're happy to address it. But yeah, we've got Matrix in the chat, Kevin in the chat. Keep those comments, questions coming. We got a lot to go over. Where do you want to start, Dom?
Well, let's talk about the three games. Here's a situation where we saw three different Bruins teams. One against Washington that played one of, if not the best, 60 minutes of hockey the entire season. One against Columbus that was definitely one of the worst games of the season. And then last night, kind of a bounce back where it wasn't perfect, but they needed to get back to where they needed to be to pull out a victory. So, three games, three different stories. I know Washington was coming off a back-to-back in that game, but
I was
that
just
was
gonna ask,
sheer dominance from Boston. Absolute dominance.
I was just gonna ask you though. You mentioned it. They are the Capitals were coming off back to back, so they were on the back leg of it going into the holiday break. Yes, the Bruins dominated, but how much was Washington really trying to give it their all? And I get it. There was some stuff in that. You had Wallstrom get tossed, and so you had the double the 5-on-4 for 10 minutes or whatever it was that you had to kill. Like, there were great things that the Bruins did. I'm not trying to minimize that. But what really was in that game for Washington?
Oh, Washington's fighting for something. Don't underestimate that. I think what we saw is the Bruins were so dominating that Washington just couldn't get on track. I don't want to make it sound like they weren't trying, and that's why Boston looks so good. It's far from that. Tom Wilson was out there trying to be himself. The goaltending was good. Their defensemen were great. It wasn't for lack of effort from Washington. It was give credit to the Bruins. They dominated that hockey game.
I think it's their best win of the season so far. That is, I will go so far as to say I think that game was their best 60-minute effort from start to finish all year that we've seen. I don't know if you'd go that far, but I'm willing to go that far.
I think so.
I know some people have called into question the Washington side of it, and I agree. What I saw was pure effort from Washington. They couldn't get things on track, and every time they started to, Boston counterpunched them with something else, which was always really good to see. So I was really excited by that Capitals game, and then you have the 3-day break, and they come out and lay a goose egg on Friday.
Yeah, I'm not making excuses for the Bruins, just like I'm not making excuses for Washington. Having to travel 7:30 in the morning on game day, it's unheard of in the NHL, and maybe something that they should look at in the next collective bargaining agreement. Instead of 3 mandatory days off, make it 4, but travel allowed on the 4th day.
Yeah, something like that would be a good
But
change.
it is what it is. Those are the rules. They knew about it, and they just weren't prepared to play a hockey game.
Yeah, and I think if you've listened, I know you pretty much listen to Jaffe and Razor on the Morning Brew after games when it's available, and Andrew Raycroft, having been a goaltender, having played in the National Hockey League, had said all along, because of the travel, day of game, everything was just going to be off. And so, again, not to make excuses, because like you said, they weren't prepared for it. They came out and they laid an egg. You can't dwell on that either. You have to be able to look at it and go, okay, we sucked, throw the tape away, move on to the next one. And then sure enough, Saturday, after coming home, they get the shutout win. It was a good bounce back game.
It wasn't perfect, no, but it was good. Um, Now they just got to build off of it, and we keep saying that, but that's exactly where this team is they need to keep building.
Absolutely. Now, someone who has been building, and I know it's coming up in the comments. We're going to talk about some roster stuff. I see the comments. Let's dive into some of this. First, Matrix mentions Fabian Lysell getting sent back down to Providence today. Let's talk a little bit about Fabian Lysell and his performance before we dive into the roster juggling and all that stuff.
I thought he was fine. Is Fabian Lysell ready for full-time NHL duty? No. I will be the first to admit that, but I was also the first to admit that he should be called up, despite of that, and gave my reasons why. A lot of people hated that he was paired with Justin Brazeau and Trent Frederick, but let's not forget, Lysell has chemistry with and has played a lot with Justin Brazeau in the American Hockey League, and we saw it on the goal that the two work together absolutely fine. Trent Frederick, despite being invisible most of the game last night, what Fabian Lysell did was force Trent Frederick to move his feet to keep up. And when is Trent Frederick at his best? When he's moving his feet. Whether we continue to see that, I don't know. But all in all, a good game. The thing by Lysell. The thing said, I'll give you a couple of examples. So there was a couple of times when he had the puck. He was skating to the Columbus zone late in the shift. Excuse me. And I've seen him do this at the J20, the WHL level, the AHL level. Fabian Lysell would think of himself and continue on with the puck and try and make something happen. Where most times he would have turned it over and the play would have gone the other way. Not last night. He did the same thing. He did what the Bruins want, chip it in, put it in an area where the goaltender doesn't have an opportunity to play it and make Columbus skate for the puck and go off for a line change. And he did that each and every time last night. Second of all, his back check, again, saw it in the J20, saw it in the dub, saw it plenty of times in the AHL. A lot of times was non-existent. But last night, he skated hard on the back check at every opportunity.
Yeah, I saw that's what I saw. I saw him getting back on pucks that needed, he was positionally sound overall. Was he perfect? No. But he got roughly 11 and a half minutes of ice time. He scored early. which is definitely a confidence booster. He participated in the goal anyway. I know they officially took the assist away, but he played a role in that goal. That's what matters. Like you said, he got Frederick going, and physically, not on the score sheet or anything like that, but he helped make Trent Frederick more visible again. I didn't hate the fact that he was paired with Frederick and Brazeau. I thought they were going to try to give him more of a top six role with guys like Martian and Coyle, just because they are a little bit more defensively minded, and they would have allowed him to focus more on his offensive acumen. But I didn't hate it either. From what I saw, all in all, yeah, I would say he's earned another game is the best way to put it. Now, does that mean he's in the game against who they got coming up on what's the next one?
Washington.
Washington. Thank you. We were just talking about Washington, so I was second guessing myself on it. I don't know if I'd have him in the lineup against Washington, given the style that they play is a little bit different. But I thought he was a good player for the matchup against the Blue Jackets, and it worked out well. Now, I get people being upset the fact that he got sent back down after one game. We're going to dive into that. Before we dive into the cap and the roster management and some of those questions, what did you think of, and I'm pulling up John's comment here. He says, I don't get McLaughlin on the roster instead of Poitras. Now, my thought behind this is purely based on role, because Mark McLaughlin is going to play on the fourth line, and he has fit well with Beecher and Kostelic and Koepke as they've been in and out. Poitras, you want him getting those top 6 minutes down in Providence. Unless a top six center spot opens up, there's no need to call Matthew Poitras up at this time. Thoughts?
Yeah, Matthew Poitras cannot fill the role that Mark McLaughlin does. Is Matthew Poitras a better hockey player? Yeah. Does Mark McLaughlin fit the role that they need Mark McLaughlin to fill better than Matthew Poitras? Yes. It's not about the player and his standing. It's what do the Bruins need? And they need a fourth liner. And Matthew Poitras is not a fourth liner. He's not. I'm sorry. It's just, look, there's no bigger supporter of Matthew Poitras than me.
That's true. That's true. Kevin, you can attest to that too. That is true.
If you can find one, I'd love to meet them and shake their hands. But Matthew Poitras does not fit the role that the Bruins needed better than Mark McLaughlin. It's that simple.
That's what it comes down to. Oz mentions, what's the point? Bringing up and sending down Lysell, Merck before that. We'll get into that. But I do appreciate the clarification on that. Curious Browser says what one tolerates and teaches people how to treat them. They know when they can take a game or 2 or 3 off, and they do. I don't think this team is at a position where they should be taking games off, and they know that. They just weren't at their best. Case in point. At the NHL level, players shouldn't require a coach to tell them to play hard. That's a jobber collecting a check. Most NHL players don't have coaches telling them you need to play hard in the classic sense that you would talk to a child. We got Sully jumping in from our friends over at Something's Bruin. Sully, how's everything going? Hopefully you enjoyed your holidays as well. And then Matrix says Frederick has been invisible for ages now. Maybe it's time for him to see the 9th floor for a couple games. Initially, when I saw Lysell was called up, that's what I thought they might have been going for. I was texting someone, and my original thought was Lysell would slide in on that second line, and they would shift Coyle back to the third line center role. But again, I didn't.
But Lysell does not fill a role that Trent Frederick is supposed to be playing.
No,
Lysell is not. So
no, Coyle would have shifted to the third line center, and Lysell would have taken Coyle's spot on the second line right wing next to Martian and Lindholm.
They still wouldn't have sat Frederick for that.
It was just my first thought.
But you go back to the conversation between about Poitras and McLaughlin. They call up a player to fill a player's role, and Fabian Lysell does not fill the role that Trent Frederick is supposed to be playing. It's why for not 1 second did I think Frederick was coming out of the lineup to make room for Lysell.
And that's fair too. I see both ways of it.
Yeah, but the Bruins just have never, ever under Don Sweeney operated that way. Never. You look at when Merkulov got called up last year. What was it for? To replace Matthew Poitras.
Yeah.
Okay. When Merkulov was called up this year, who was it to fill in for?
He played third line left wing.
Right. It was to fill in basically for Brad Marchand, who was still in the lineup, but not at 100%, hoping that Merkulov would be able to pick up some of the slack for Brad Marchand.
That game he did. No, in that game he helped Freddie pick it up because that was Freddie's 2-goal game.
So. Who sat out last night for Fabian Lysell? Oliver Wahlstrom.
Wahlstrom, yeah.
The guy that they picked up for free, hoping he could fill that third line role. That's the way the Bruins operate. They're not going to call Jackson Edward up to fill in for Charlie McAvoy. They might call Jackson Edward up to fill in for Nikita Zadorov.
Right.
You get where I'm going at? Every player has a role.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying that was an initial thought that I had, but I see where you're coming from with that explanation, and it does also make sense too. So I get it. That was a thought that I had, just trying to think of a different perspective. Curious Browser also says, time to get a number one for Freddie from a playoff team out of the division. The Bees should play that out and get the most. I know we talked a lot last week about trading Trent Frederick. Where do you stand on pulling the trigger on something like that?
I still think Don Sweeney's priority is to get him signed at his price, and he'll be fair about it. Whether it's a 1-year deal, give him another prove it deal, or a long-term deal, but it's definitely going to have to be at Sweeney's price, and the hopes that once a contract is done, Frederick will go back to what he was the last couple of years. I think that's the priority. I don't think the priority is to move him unless somebody really comes in with an offer he can't say no to.
Yeah, and I really think if you can get a first for Freddie, Sweeney would probably pull the trigger on that. I just don't see anybody who's offering you a first right now. Maybe as you get closer to the trade deadline. I mean, we haven't really heard anything in talks developing over a contract. So as the deadline gets closer and the contract might not have made any movement, if someone is on the playoff bubble and they say, we're willing to offer you a first, even conditional, I'm sure Sweeney would jump on that. But Freddie helps this team when he's playing well. So to just dump him off for a first-round pick is not the right way to go until you know where he's at, especially with that contract. So, and then also in addition, McLaughlin's stock goes up as he has been solid, which is helpful, yes, but I'm not sure Mark McLaughlin is someone that teams are going to be trading you for, especially when he's up at the end of the season and they can sign him for just a contract. So,
just to clarify something on McLaughlin, a lot of people are saying they shouldn't have played him last night and waited so he doesn't reach the 10 games to require waivers again. It doesn't matter whether he played or not. As of 5 o'clock today, he would have required waivers anyway for being on the roster for 30 cumulative days since last clearing waivers. So whether he played last night or not had no bearing on it as of 5 p.m. Being on the roster today, he requires waivers either way.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the person I'm circling on is Wahlstrom, because they got him on a waiver claim. He made it through to them on waivers, so realistically, other teams who are worse off than you have already said no to him once. My guess is he's someone they might try to get through. To my knowledge, no one else put a claim in. I don't know if you've heard anything regarding Wahlstrom. But I think he's someone who, if they can get him through, would do well to take a year in Providence and come and basically get a contract off of that. So let's see. My thoughts about any player being brought up is that there are openings, get them now and make yourself a spot. They are not always available. The issue with that, though, is if the player comes up and they play well, Dom, you always talk about the adrenaline bump, right?
Yeah.
What happens when that adrenaline wears off? And, we've seen that with guys in the past where they come up, they play great for a handful of games, and then it peters off. If you've traded the guy that they came up to kind of sort of partially replace, now you're stuck with the guy who's petering out, and you want to send them back with nobody else. So there's a balance there. Boston Fan 2000 asks, what are our thoughts about Gleb Veremyov, and if the Bruins sign him out of college after this season? That'll be a good question for tomorrow's show, where we talk all about the prospects. So we'll bookmark this one and bring it up tomorrow, unless you want to give a quick thought today.
No, we'll get to that one tomorrow.
Perfect. Let's see. Kevin says a first for Freddie is slipping with every game this kid plays. By the deadline, I don't know if that would even be an option. Who knows, Kevin? But you still have an option to deal him as the deadline gets closer. And if you know that the combination of him and Lysell works, Brazeau, Lysell, and Freddie in the middle is a decent third line for you, that might be able to boost his trade value as well. So I was waiting for someone to bring this up. Is there any word on Hampus Lindholm and his recovery? Didn't Sacco say on the Columbus Blue Jackets broadcast that he was nowhere close to returning? If that's the case, why not put him on LTIR? I was waiting for this to come up. But before we dive into LTIR and the roster and how that all works, have you heard anything new on Hampus Lindholm?
Now, Sacco was not on the Columbus broadcast. The Columbus broadcast mentioned that they had talked to Sacco in the morning, and that Sacco had told them that he's still weeks away. He's a long ways away. Sacco also informed the Bruins media that Hampus Lindholm is not close to returning.
And that's kind of been the message ever since the injury. So
yeah, I think Sacco is more vague than even Montgomery was. So I don't know what to read into that. As for LTIR, because I know Chris got into this debate with somebody on Twitter, and I actually had to leave the conversation because I was sick and tired of reading it. The simple answer is there is no reason to put Hampus Lindholm on LTIR until you need the space. The Bruins right now do not need the space. If you need the space and you LTIR them, you better make sure that you have a way of clearing that space once Hampus Lindholm is cleared to play, because then you have to fit him under the cap. Okay? While on LTIR, you're not banking cap space. So the Bruins' goal right now, let's say they put him on LTIR today, of having $2.8 million in deadline cap space to zero. Because
they go straight to zero.
They go straight to zero because you do not bank cap space when you're on LTIR. So
now, real quick,
people
just
say,
to clarify,
but you can use. There's nothing to clarify.
No, I have a question for you though that might clarify something. Because it's retroactive, that's
It
why
has
they
nothing
would
to
vote
do with
zero.
it. Nothing to do with it. Doesn't affect the numbers at all. Has nothing to do with the numbers. Does not affect the numbers at all.
Okay.
That's why LTIR is always retroactive. Where was I now?
So the LTIR money becomes available if you put him on LTIR.
No, let me think of where my train of thought was. Okay, so the argument is, why not put Hampus Lindholm on LTIR and use it now? So let's say they go out and get a $2 million player. You now have to clear that $2 million once Hampus Lindholm becomes healthy. And how are you going to clear it?
Gonna have to cut someone that saves you $2 million.
So you can't use that money right now. You can use it to go over, but you have to be able to clear it. And long-term injury reserve is very, very complicated. You almost need a master's degree in mathematics to figure it out. You just have to trust me and say, when I say there is absolutely no point of putting Hampus Lindholm on LTIR right now. None whatsoever. It would actually hurt the Bruins to do it now than it would be to help them.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. It would be more hurtful than anything. And I think of anybody understanding that would be Evan Gold. So as Kevin pointed out up here earlier, I'm assuming reasons for why who's on the roster is on the roster has to do with cap movement and management. That's 100% of what it has to do with. Again, we saw Fabian Lysell get sent down. Mark McLaughlin hasn't been sent back down because he would require waivers. I've seen some people saying that the Fabian Lysell move was just a paper transaction. What do you think about him being sent back down?
I've seen people say it's a showcase. One person in particular. And
what, for a trade?
Yeah.
I don't see how that is a showcase. One game is not a showcase.
Let me say one thing about the NHL and the way it operates today, actually for a couple of years, is the NHL and the American Hockey League are so heavily scouted by scouts of other teams watching your players. Everybody has a book on Fabian Lysell. It's not like his draft was just yesterday. They have a book on him. They know what he was like pre-draft. They know what he was like post-draft. No one needs to showcase Fabian Lysell to see what type of player he is. Everybody knows. Everybody. There is no showcase going on. Second, Lysell came out and said it last night. His parents were in town for Christmas. Funny thing is, yesterday morning, the Bruins sent McLaughlin back down. Okay? Yep. And within an hour, they called McLaughlin and Lysell back up. I don't understand the McLaughlin move. Nothing changed his waiver eligibility and all that. But if you look at the AHL Bruins transaction page, he was sent down and immediately called back up with Fabian Lysell. I don't understand it. I don't know what they were doing. Is it a paper transaction? Could be.
Well, in that case, it was.
They got 2 days off. Why not send him down and bank? I don't know. I can't do the math off the top of my head. And bank some dollars for trade deadline day. they've been doing it for years under Evan Gold. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's the case.
Yeah, and it's actually on the AHL transaction for the same day too. So it's almost like they checked off the box of sending him down, and then they went, "Oh wait, that's not what we meant to do. Recall him," and then resubmitted it, and they were like, "Okay, whatever." Yeah. So again, I'm not trying to call incompetence. It's just that's how it looks on paper. So I don't get why they would have done it. But yeah, to your point, Fabian Lysell's family was in town. He got the call that morning. I believe he was at the morning skate for Providence.
I don't know. I don't recall.
I thought I heard that. I thought I heard that somewhere where it was after the morning skate. He got the phone call, and his family, they thought they were going to go see him in Providence. They all ended up getting sent up to Boston, which was great. Good for him. Good for his family. It's great that they got to see it. And that may have simply been all it was. Let's see what he can do in this lineup. We've gotten smoked by this team twice. Let's see if we can inject a little something in the lineup with him. He's earned it. It's not like his play down in Providence has not earned him an opportunity. But now he knows what he's also fighting for. I want to see if he stays in Providence and he's there for their next game, how does he respond in Providence?
Something else about the call up I want to touch on, because I talk about it a lot and a lot of fans still fail to understand it. So I'm glad that Joe Sacco touched on it yesterday. So maybe more people will start listening to me when I tell you about it 2 years earlier. What the Bruins do is they decide the type of player they want. They want a guy to fill in for Oliver Wahlstrom. Joe Sacco has a conversation with Ryan Mougenel, says, this is what I want. This is the player I'm looking for. And asks Ryan Mougenel who best fits that. And in this case, it was Fabian Lysell. He's been playing great. Then Sacco has a discussion with management. Bingo, they call him up. The Bruins, Joe's, they don't call up because they don't watch these players all the time. They get a lot of input from Ryan Mougenel. Sacco will explain to him what he needs, what type of player he wants, and Ryan Mougenel makes that recommendation. Sacco has a chat with Sweeney. Sweeney calls up the player. And that's the way the system operates 999 times out of 1,000.
Yeah, and it's been working. Like, I know a lot of people want to sit here and say, talk crap about the Bruins organization, but they are well revered around the league. The operation they have put in place between what they have going on in Providence, how it correlates with what they have going on in Boston, the amount of success they have had at both levels, really, because both have been playoff caliber teams for well over a decade. So we sit here as fans, and yes, we want them to win every year. That's a want. It's not realistic though. And so they have to have more realistic view of is this a team that is ready to compete for a Stanley Cup? Now, I don't think they're naive enough to look at the current roster as is and say this team will compete for a Stanley Cup. I really don't think they're in that bubble. But it's also not as simple as let's trade these three guys and replace them with these three guys, call up these three guys from Providence and replace the three guys that we're just going to give away for pennies on the dollar. And now all of a sudden we're a championship contending team. It's not that simple. If it was that simple, anybody could fill the role. Like, there's a method to what they're doing, a process, as you were talking about. When they need a certain type of player who fits the mold, like you said, Jackson Edward is not going to come up and replace Charlie McAvoy. That's not what he is there for. That's not
Yeah, but
role.
what I'm talking about is where the decision comes from, Chris. It's something that
Right.
I've been
I'm talking about
stressing
the
for
whole
years.
process. I know you have.
I'm not.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about where the decision comes from.
Well, I think part where the decision comes from is part of the process.
Next to Ryan Mouchinel, I'm probably more qualified than anybody in the Bruins organization as to who should be the next call up based on what the team needs. Because Joe Sacco doesn't know, Jay Leach doesn't know, Chris Kelly doesn't know, Don Sweeney does not watch every Providence game. He doesn't know. Evan Gold is there just about every game. He might know.
Right. And what I'm saying is that decision-making process is part of the whole organizational process. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but I don't want to get too broad. It's like thinking Trent Frederick is coming out of the game to make room for Fabian Lysell. And I'm trying to explain how it works. I don't care about the whole organization. The one player move. This is how it works.
Curious says, yeah, but we really want to see the efforts at least most of the time. A loss is a loss. Was it well played? It's all the quality of play. Bees fans are fair. I will have to push back on that one, Curious, just because some are. Some don't give a flying rat's ass about anything that's logical. A large portion of the fan base can be fair, but they're also having an elevated level of expectation as well. It's not realistic to say that this team is going to make it to the Final Four every year that they play. So, anyways,
look, let me expand on that.
absolutely.
About the fairness of fans. There are a lot of blinders. I listen to the bitching and the whining about the Bruins having no prospects at the World Junior Championships this year.
That was going to be another thing I mentioned.
Now, if you want to get into it, we can get into it right now. But in fairness, and I don't want to get into this debate with other people because even if I win the debate, it feels like you've lost and I feel like they've won because they've actually got me to engage in this nonsense. Okay, so what? The Bruins don't have a prospect in this World Junior Championships. But I'll tell you what. Donslack Mellis, not eligible this year. Played in the 2022, 2023, 2024 World Junior Championships. Has also played for Latvia at the World Junior Championships under 18. Has played for Latvia at the World Championships twice in 2023, 2024, and will be there again in 2025. Also played this past summer for Latvia at the Olympic qualifying matches, and he almost single-handedly carried that team into the Olympic tournament. You know what? Give me that player who's still only 20 years old, will be 21 in January, I believe is his birthday. So he'll be 21 next month. You give me that player over 99% of the players at the World Junior Championships this year. Because I tell you what, 99% of the players in this tournament will never play in the NHL. Never. So I don't care that there's no prospect there. Jonathan Marenberg. I know he wasn't a Bruins draft pick, but they sought him out, got him in a trade. 21 years old, has already in his second season of professional hockey in Sweden. Played for Sweden at the World Hockey Challenge under 17s. Played for Sweden in the under 16s, the under 17s, and this past summer, where he got injured, was on their invite for their roster for the World Championships in 2025. Give me that player over 99% of the players at the World Junior Championships. The University of Nevada, Las Vegas, last night beat a Division I NCAA team who were actually the defending championship or champions in Denver. Beat them. This is a team trying to get into Division I and beat the champions that have 12 NHL draft picks on the roster. How many does University of Nevada have? Zero. Yeah. Just because a player was drafted doesn't mean they're going to be NHL players. Like, I mean, I could go on and on and on with this, but we'll get deeper into it tomorrow night because that's our prospects show. But I don't give a flying F that there's no Bruins prospects.
You can say it, Dom. It's okay. I think you've earned the right to be able to say that.
They've aged out. Beckett Henriksen is eligible. Dean Letourneau is eligible this year, next, and the year after. Elliot Gronwald, I bet you gets invited to Team USA's camp for next year. Loke Johansson is eligible for 2 more seasons. I bet you he gets invited to the Sweden camp next year. Jonathan Morello is eligible. He's a surefire no invite to Team Canada. That's the way it is. They've aged out. And when you don't have first round picks and you're picking late every year, that's what happens to your prospect pool. Chris Pazolozzi was one of the last 2 cuts for Team USA this
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't go so far as to say Christian Konstantinsky would be a massive consideration for Sweden, but when you have 7 players that are eligible or 8 players that are eligible, you got to look at where they are too. Like you said, most of them are probably going to get invites next year.
As an 18-year-old, Christian Konstantinsky represented Sweden at the World Junior Championships under 18s. Represented Sweden at under 19s and represented Sweden at under 20s as an 18-year-old. Just because he's not one of the 6 best junior Swedish defensemen for this year's roster doesn't hurt me one bit.
No. Doesn't hurt me one bit at all. And there's other things that are more important in the player's development than whether or not they've qualified for these rosters. You've gotten to the point of where I was trying to go with it. It really isn't that big of a deal, at least in my opinion. And to your point, when you're drafting where Don Sweeney drafts, you have to find guys who have different paths to make it to the NHL. Konstantinsky is a great example. If he is to make it to the NHL, or Dean Letourneau is another great example. He didn't I saw someone talking about him, calling him a bust because he's not scoring for BC right now. This was never a season for Dean Letourneau to put up points, ever. If you had the expectation for him to score an assload of points for BC, you have the wrong understanding of what player development looks like. Dean Letourneau has skipped an entire age group for developing. Would he look 7 times better if he was in the USHL right now? Absolutely. Probably way better than he looks right now at BC. But that's not the point. He's taking the learning process and he's incorporating the NCAA level of play at a much younger age And you know what? In the long run, probably going to benefit him because he's got the right mindset. Do want to give Karen a shout out. She has been watching this show since we debuted. So shout out Karen here in the comments as well.
Hi, Karen.
She actually got me Winter Classic hat when they held it here last time. So always got to shout Karen out here. One of our original listeners here. Michael asks, are there scouts the Bruins have lost that you wish they had kept, or scouts out there that you wish the Bruins were to have on staff?
I can't say that there's any that I wish they hadn't lost. I mean, these guys move on all the time. Is there any out there I wish they had? Boy, I wish they could get Mark Hunter, not Dale Hunter. I wish they could get Mark Hunter. That guy does nothing but build championship teams for the London Knights. He was instrumental for the Toronto Maple Leafs for a couple. I actually feel he should have got the GM job, but you talk about a guy with knowledge and understanding when it comes to scouting and recruiting players. There's a guy for you. A guy in Chicago, I forget his name, is their head Canadian scout. I wish I could remember his name. I would love to have him on staff. Other than that, I can't think of anybody else.
Well, speaking of the staff, we've had this conversation a couple times before when it comes to the coaching staff. Now that Joe Sacco has been elevated to the head coaching role, we were talking about whether or not they should add someone to the coaching staff, and you had been talking about specialty teams needs and stuff like that. You sent out a tweet back.
Oh, did I ever get burned for it?
The Red Wings have fired a couple coaches recently, and my question to you is, can either of them coach specialty teams, and should they be considered if they can?
Bob Bugner.
Yes,
and
that was
people automatically thought I meant for the head coaching job. No, it very specifically in my tweet said assistant coach.
I know you did.
You know, the guy's very good with young players. He's very good in special teams. He coached in the Ontario Hockey League for 10 seasons, won 2 OHL championships, 2 Memorial Cups. Only once in 10 years did he have a power play finish in the bottom half of the league, and only once did he have a PK finish in the bottom half of the league. He coached Florida Panthers as a head coach to an 80, 65, and 8 record, and then went to a pretty bad San Jose team that didn't know what they were doing before getting canned there and going to Detroit as an assistant coach. And you very well can't blame him for what's going on in Detroit. And the fact that he's one of the 3 people that were involved in having the Windsor Spitfires blacklist me on Twitter or block me on Twitter makes it all the more enjoyable for me, considering that the Bruins hate me on Twitter right now as it is. So,
yeah, you're not really helping our cause on that front. But it is what it is. So, Mike, I mean, would it hurt to bring in Bogner? I don't think it would. I know your tweet specifically said as an assistant coach. I caught that. I don't think a lot of people did. But I would add him to the staff without question, especially given his history with specialty teams.
Yeah. And look, I'm of the belief, and this is an opinion that I just formed just recently. Why is Chris Kelly coaching the power play for the Bruins? And the answer given is that because he was a PK specialist, he knows how penalty kills work. Therefore, he should be able to coach the PP through them. Okay? With that in mind, Bob Boughner has coached both. He's actually played both at various different levels of hockey. My opinion is now to have a coach coach the defense, a coach coaching the offense or the forwards, and a coach coaching the specialty teams. And that would be both PP, PK,
6-on-5 extra skater.
5-on-6, 6-on-5, both ways. One coach specifically responsible for that. And it's I don't know, the NHL has followed the NFL model of like an offensive coordinator, PP coach, a defensive coordinator, a PK coach. I want to get away from that. If you believe in the theory of having Chris Kelly as your power play coach, then you have to have some sort of belief in my theory that one guy coaching both is better.
Yeah, I would think so. I just don't think having someone from the outside of the organization added to the bench would hurt either, especially given what we've seen from this group. Just that extra set of eyes. I mean, a lot of names out there could help, but where he has specific knowledge and expertise in that specialty teams range, I would certainly look to add him here, if possible. I mean, he may not even be interested. That's another part of it too.
Yeah.
Both sides have to be interested. Michael asks, when a team like Latvia beats the Bruins, does that get NHL scouts' attention? Meaning, do they then think to scout in more detail that program? I'm not quite sure what you mean by when they beat the Bruins, but
I think it means Canada.
Yeah, a team like Canada or you mentioned the Las Vegas team beating the NCAA champions from last year. Like, how does that kind of shift NHL scouts' attention?
I don't know that it does. I mean, there's a lot of scouts, a lot of GMs at this tournament, so they're getting a look now. Is there a couple of Latvian players that should go in the 2025 entry draft? Definitely. But I don't know that one game changes the focus of a scouting staff. They may see a guy that was great in the game, like the goaltender, and have one of their European scouts go check him out for a couple of games. But I don't think the philosophy. I know the philosophy doesn't change at all.
Yeah, I don't see how that would change it overly drastically, at least. Um, let's see. David asks, any prospects from other organizations you would like the Bruins to potentially trade for?
Oh, yeah, I could make 2 rosters out of guys I would potentially trade for, but doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, y- it's a twofold question because just because you like a player from another team, especially one in their system. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that you could name, but I doubt they're available. There's no need for them to have been made available for any purpose. Like Colin Graff, he's looked great for the Barracuda. Uh, we were talking about him a couple years ago at this point. Should the Bruins make a move for him when he was out of college? Yeah, he looks great, but I don't see San Jose looking to move on from him either. Could he
No.
help the Bruins? Yeah, he's got 25, 26 points in the American Hockey League in just under 30 games. So, yeah, he'd help the Bruins for sure. Would he help them at the NHL level? Not maybe this year, but absolutely, there are plenty of players around out there. Wilkes-Barre Scranton has a couple. Just watch the AHL, and you'll be able to see the ones that stand out. Like they truly do. What do good power plays?
That's the better way to have phrased that question would be, if I could have the choice of every prospect in the American Hockey League or lower from every other team, how many of the current Bruins prospects would I keep? And the answer would be very short. I would keep Matt Poitras. I would keep Oscar Yelvik.
Yeah.
I would keep Jonathan Mirenberg. And I would keep Dean Letourneau.
That,
The
that's
rest I
that's the whole list.
the rest I would replace with uh, other players.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are enough other players out there that you could build a much better farm system. But I'm not going to complain about having a guy like Riley Duran in the system or
No, I'm not.
Jackson
But
Nelson or you know, it, yeah, there's plenty of players out there that you'd want to have over Trevor Kuntar just based on their talent. But I like having Kuntar for what we'll need him for down the road. So, Curious Browser says that the truth is bitter, so we shouldn't really worry too much about what the Bruins think of you on Twitter. Um, David says, my theory: the best NHL power play, i.e., Devils, Knights, have one-touch passes, one-touch shots. They don't allow opposition to set up, which coincides with Michael's question here. What do good power plays do well that the Bruins aren't doing at the current moment on their power play?
designing the power play with the talent that you have on the roster.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way: the Edmonton Oilers with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and Evan Bouchard aren't going to deploy the same power play that the Boston Bruins do.
Right. And we're starting to see a little bit of, I don't want to say change in the power play, but if you look in the American Hockey League, you'll see Matthew Poitras runs the power play from the bumper position. And
Well, no, it depends. It
okay, sorry.
depends because,
He's in that bumper position.
well, sometimes they have him in the Pasternak spot with Merkulov on the other elbow, firing one-timers. So it all depends.
I guess
I don't know.
Opponent.
I don't know if it's based on opponent or what, but it changes.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have a couple different ways to approach a power play. You can't just not everybody has Alex Ovechkin where you can just stand in one spot and score that frequently. So
Just to add to Michael's question there, I haven't
This one
talked to
here.
Kirk in a while, and I don't know what he thinks of this year's Bruins team. But
I was wondering if that was a.
if you shoot him a message on Twitter, I'm sure he'll let you know.
I was gonna say I figured that was something, an inside question between the two of you or something like that. So I'll have to check and see. I probably, if he's covered the team for a while, I'll probably have him on my list of
Well,
folks that I follow here.
He's a GM in the USHL. I doubt he's
Oh,
going to
is he?
comment publicly on it.
I gotcha. Let me see. Probably don't have him then. Maybe I do. I don't know. I'll check later. Anyway, Michael says, "What aspects of Pasternak's game elevated with Bergeron's departure, and what aspects have regressed?" That is a fantastic question.
I think his playmaking ability was very underrated beforehand, and I think it's come to the forefront now. um,
Yeah,
what's regressed? I don't think anything has regressed. People say he's not shooting as much or he's not scoring as much. Well, yeah, that's what happens when um, you become a playmaker as well. You have to take it comes away from other parts of your game. But I'll tell you what, if Pasternak wasn't the playmaker that he's become, and they just relied him to score goals, and that's what he did, this team would be a lot worse off than it is.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about how he's having a down year, and he's still just shy of a point per game pace. So it's kind of funny when you say, "Oh, well, at a point per game, he's down a level." Um, do you think he's still battling something?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, to me, he looks off. Um, at this point, I'm not complaining that he'll have 2 weeks off for that Four Nations face-off later this year. So, Michael says board work and details feel like they've regressed. Um, I wouldn't really say they've regressed. It's just when you don't have a player like Bergeron on the ice with you, you're as talented as David Pastrnak, you're going to get more of the attention. Like, he went from having Patrice Bergeron as his center to Pavel Zacha. As much as we like that combination, Bergeron is better than Zacha. Period. So he's going to take more attention away from Pastrnak than Zacha would. So board work, stuff like that, he's just getting, they're physical with him. I wouldn't say it's regressed though.
I I would go as far as to say that when Pasternak was playing with Bergeron, Bergeron would draw the attention more than Pasternak, and that opened things up for Pasternak.
Yeah, that would be I wouldn't disagree with that. I wouldn't disagree with that. I will say this though. In his last 2 seasons, Pastrnak has had over 100, has 110 and 113 points. So if his regression is going to be a 95-point pace, like he's still at a point per game right now. Roughly, he's 37 points in 38 games. There's going to be a 2-point game coming up for him at some point. It's bound to happen. So I wouldn't be too upset by that. I'm checking to see about his shot percentage though. His shot percentage seems to have gone down a bit though. Last year he's at 12%. This year he's at about 8 to 8.5. So, but he still has 151 shots.
Yeah,
Anyway,
he's shooting.
yeah, I wouldn't call that really a regression by all that much. He's also averaging slightly less, more close to the time on ice he had 2 years ago. So I think he'll be all right. I'm not overly worried about him. I do want to see him get healthy. I think he is battling something, though. I know we've had some questions about the Trent Frederick situation.
Just real quick,
Yes, go ahead.
Colorado College just spanked the team we were talking about earlier, beating
The Vegas team.
Denver last night. Yeah, University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Colorado College spanked them 8-0.
Oh,
But there was a beauty of a goal that Ty Gallagher was involved in. You guys make sure you catch the show tomorrow. We'll show the highlights of
yes,
that.
that goal was amazing. Was that his only point on the night?
I don't know. I have to, because I wasn't paying attention the last period in 5 minutes. I'll have to go back and rewatch it.
Curious, goes back to our topic about Pasternak. Perhaps that same dynamic is playing out now between Pasta and Zacha, who seems to be benefiting when Pasta makes the pass instead. Or Pasta's getting a little bit of the extra attention.
And Zacha is shooting more. And I tell you what, I've been saying it since 2016 when Zacha got drafted, I believe.
He was 2015.
2015. NHL ready shot at that time. The guy's got a superb shot. Why he doesn't use it as much as he should is beyond me, but we're starting to see it now.
Yeah, I mean, his first year in Boston, he shot 16% clip. Last year, 14%. This year, he's at just shy of 12%. And he had last year he tied his shot total for the highest in his career, which came in his last year in New Jersey when he shot 10%. And that was in 8 more games last year than he had with New Jersey. So I do think there's a little bit of surge from Zacha because he's playing with Pasternak, who's okay with deferring. Like, Zacha has a very, very good shot. As you mentioned, he's had it since he was drafted. That probably played a role in why he was drafted. He was taken 6th in that 2015 draft. I know we don't like to talk about the 2015 draft, but he was drafted right behind Noah Hannafin and right before Ivan Provorov and Zach Werenski. He was drafted above Timo Meier and Mikko Rantanen. There's a reason for that. I mean, he's doing fine next to Pasternak. I would keep that group together and that duo together. I think the big question is going to come up when he's owed a new contract, but that's not this year, next year. It's the year after that. So you've got some time to worry about that. See what he earns between now and then. Curious Browser Dom has also been talking up Geeky's shot, which we are seeing as well. Morgan starting to come into form on that same line. I was baffled when they first put him on that line. Geeky, Zacha, Pasternak. I like what it's developing into.
Well, you got 3 shooters. And I think because it took Geeky some time to get going and find his role on that line, has something to do with Pasternak's production dipping a little bit. But Geeky has found his game. Pasternak has found his shot. Zach has found his shot. Geeky has found his shot. Zacha has found his game. And that bodes well for David Pasternak because, like I said, he's capable of being an elite playmaker at this level, something he's been very under
appreciated for
by not just fans but media as well. That we could see an uptick in all 3 of them going forward.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of people questioning, like, why is he still there when that line started to struggle? I do think some of that was growing pains of three guys that play well together. They're playing off of each other quite well. As you mentioned, all three can shoot. Pastrnak has that ability to distribute, and he's the kind of guy that, like, he has to be the Bruins' Nikita Kucherov. Now, is he going to be to that level? No, probably not. Nikita Kucherov is that special. But if you can have Pastrnak play that role with two guys who can shoot the puck, Pastrnak will get his goals. He knows when to shoot himself, but he also knows when to distribute. And if you can give him guys who, when he makes that decision to distribute, are capable of fighting the back of the net at a 10, 12, 13, 14% clip, all of their numbers are going to go up. And they're all going to be successful. I just checked. Morgan Geekie is back at where he was in his final year of Seattle when it comes to his shooting percentage, just over 11%. Last year for Boston, he shot at 13%. So it's going to take some regression. If that's really where his ceiling is, and that's where he's at consistently, a 13 to 14% shooter, it's going to take a little bit more time for it to get back up there, but it will creep up there. So I do like nature. So
I look at it like this. I don't have a problem with Geekie on that line right now. Is he a long-term answer? No. The only problem I have with Charlie Coyle on the line with Lindholm and Marchand is that severely weakens the third line. But we don't have another answer on that second line unless Lysell or Patra become that answer right now.
Right.
That fourth line, moving guys in and out, seems to be okay. That third line where Coyle could go down there and dominate from that position, not having that is what's going to hurt this team.
Yeah, I do think some of it solidifies the thought process of Don Sweeney really needing to go out and getting a second line scoring winger, which is what he was saying at the beginning of the season. But then everything got off to such a spotty start. Things weren't going well. And then it became, is that really what the need is? Or does this team need something else? How do all the pieces fit together? We're starting to see the rest of the puzzle come back together and form its picture. And if you can sit there and say, okay, now we know that in fact that second line right winger is what we need. Now, is it Wahlstrom? Maybe, maybe not. Based on his play, based on where things are at with the roster, you might try to get him through waivers, as we talked about, and then see whether or not he can find form in Providence and see where that goes. But Don Sweeney's not in a strength trading position. He has pieces, but you're better off trying to figure out what you have in-house first before you go spending assets.
Ideally, my thinking game would be find somebody for left wing with Zacha and Pastrnak, move Geekie back to right wing with Marchand and Lindholm, move Coyle back to 3C, and you've upgraded all three lines.
Yeah, that would be another route to go. A top line left wing, a second line right wing. It's a lot easier to shop when you have a couple different options like that. Because then you're not caught in a position of making a stupid move. You know, no one's going to be in a position to overcharge you for the one piece that you're missing, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of, something we saw play out with New Jersey when they were trying to get a goaltender. They didn't want to overpay. They waited. They made their first move for Jake Allen, and then they were able to proceed with a second move down the road and get Markstrom when it was a little less urgent, but still wanted by both teams. So Matrix does point out, though, Geeky is only playing good because our buddy Brett Howard blasted him on Twitter. So
Well, that's true.
that's, yeah. I mean, all the credit in the world to Brett for that one.
Yeah.
But, you know. Then Curious asks, what is the state of the locker room now? Are they a real team yet or just an effective work group?
I can't answer that. I'm not there, so I don't know.
I don't know if they were ever really not a team. I mean, they all were at least saying the right things. I don't think anybody was really not fitting in, except for maybe the coach. Is that rough to say? But
by all accounts, from whispers I've heard, it's a fantastic room. There's no issues in that dressing room.
like, I mean, there was unsettledness. There were things like that earlier on in the season. But again, how much of that had to do with the state of where things were with Montgomery? And now that he's gone, I'm not trying to say he was a bad guy
but
or a bad coach or anything like that.
read the question again, Chris.
What's the state of the locker room now? Yes.
Now is the key word.
Now it's fine, I think.
Okay, then let's just stick to the question.
Michael says, I think Geeky also just wants to get more points than his brother Connor. Brotherly competition. Possibly, but I would credit Brett more.
I would trade Morgan for Connor 8 days a week.
Oh, yeah. Who are the top 5 glue guys on the team? The guys that pull the team together, make you want to fight for each other.
Marchand, Carlo. Oh, do you want them in order?
Let's have you do your top 5. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do them in order. Marchand, Carlo, Coyle, McAvoy, and Zacha.
Interesting. You'd go Zacha 5.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he doesn't belong on the list, but how does Jeremy Swayman not make the list?
Over who?
Over Zacha.
Don't know.
I think overall, as we were just talking about, I think the group of guys is fine. I don't think any of them are.
I include Zacha because I have personal experience with him in a locker room, and I know what he's like.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. When his deal is up, when he's 29, 30 years old, are you looking to re-sign him?
Zacha?
Yeah.
Yes.
Would you look to sign him to a long-term deal? Like would they hold an 8th-year option for him?
When he's 29, 30? No.
Okay. It would just be a 7-year deal then.
I wouldn't even do that. I would do
How
a
long would you
4-year
go?
deal. 4.
Okay.
I'm not signing anybody unless they're elite past the age of 34.
Fair. That's fair. Diving into that, though, Brad Marchand, still haven't heard anything on a new contract for him. I would be looking to bring him back. I'm not worried about that. I think that's absolutely in the cards. If he wants to come back, they'll welcome him back. In fact, I can see him taking that Patrice Bergeron approach of sign the guys that you need to sign, come to me with what's left, and we'll have our conversation. As long as I get X in some capacity, I'll be fine, and they'll probably do bonuses or something like that. We talked about Trent Frederick earlier. Not a lot of space on that has been made, but would you bring Trent Frederick back based on this year? I know you talked about the 1-year option. Is that what you would do?
That's what I would do, yeah.
See if that that affects his confidence maybe for the back half of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if it doesn't, then you're not signing him to a massive contract for 1 year,
No, exactly.
So, if you're at 2.5 or something, give him a small bump. He's still going to be a very tradable asset for you if you decide you don't want to keep him long term. Morgan Geekie. I'd be looking to re-sign him at this point. What do you think?
Definitely.
I think he's
RFA with
shown.
arbitration, though.
Yeah, no, I think they'll get him at a reasonable deal. How long would you go on a guy like Geekie, knowing that he has arbitration eligibility as a restricted free agent?
1 year, 2 years. Same as arbitration.
Okay. Wahlstrom, I don't know if we have a strong enough sample size to really make a decision, but RFA with arbitration, so I what do you think? Wouldn't hurt to bring him back.
Wahlstrom?
Yeah.
I haven't seen enough.
That's what I mean. I really, I'm trying to give the player the benefit of the doubt, but at the same
Well,
time, if you have Lysell who's ready, are you really going to need him? So
you can't give a player the benefit of the doubt. You can't. Not when it comes to handing out contracts. Otherwise, you'd be handing them out like candy, and all of a sudden, you wouldn't have any spots left.
Totally fair. John Beecher, I would totally be looking to bring him back, but again, RFA with arbitration rights. Same thing with Kostelic. I'm looking to bring them both back.
Oh yeah, Kostelic. I'd bring Kostelic back for 4 years right now.
Just take him right up until he's 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair. I would probably do that too. You'd get what? A reasonable $2.5-3 million deal out of him?
I don't think it would even be that much.
Maybe not. He's at $835K right now. So, what about Cole Koepke? Would you bring him back?
I'd bring him back for 1 year.
Brazeau, I'd be looking to bring back as of right now.
Yeah, 1 year. With
And
Brazeau, Mark McLaughlin, choice is his. He's a Group 6, so he can walk. It's totally up to him.
All right, let's see. Michael, would you give Kostelic 2 years? We just covered that here. Michael wants to know, why hasn't Trent Frederick been fighting?
I don't know. Like, you look at last night. Why Frederick didn't stand up for his teammates. One, was he on the ice? No. Two, Kostelic took care of the first one. Zadorov took care of the second one. Both were on the ice. Frederick wasn't. So, like, I don't know. The opportunity hasn't been there.
Yeah, he's not afraid to scrum it up. It's just, Kostelic has been filling that role. Koepke's been fighting a little bit because you mentioned Zadorov. Like, there's other guys that fill that role a little bit better. So I'm not overly worried about it, but that doesn't mean he's afraid to drop the gloves. I wouldn't worry about that part of his game. You got to get going in other ways versus just, all right.
It's different than other years, because in other years, if the opportunity wasn't there, he was getting shit on for not making the opportunities. This year, because there's other guys that can handle that, they're getting the opportunity before Frederick does. So, if he had to, Frederick would drop the gloves.
No doubt in my mind about it. So I like Kevin's comment here. He says, Wahlstrom has been a Bruin for an antibiotic cycle. I'm giving it more time before I think about what I'm doing with him. Absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. Wahlstrom needs to play more than 9 minutes a game and play top 6 minutes on the second line. I would love to see him in that role, but he does have to push his way into that role. And then Matrix says, not Bruins related, but any thoughts on the horrid dumpster fire of the New York Rangers, fire the coach, or continue trading players? Will Kreider be a potential fit on the Bruins? Sorry, Dom, I had to.
There's already talk that Laviolette has lost the room. I know we talked about whether Montgomery had lost the room in Boston. The New York situation's gone beyond that.
Yeah.
They absolutely, if they're going to salvage anything this season, they absolutely have to make a coaching change right now. As for Kreider, with any deal that Don Sweeney looks to make, it's about now and the future. And especially this year, more about the future than the now. Is Kreider the answer to that? I don't think he is. Not for the future of this organization. Would he help now? Certainly. But it all depends on the assets I'm going to have to give up to get him. I'm not giving up a whole lot of assets for a guy who's got 2 years left.
Let me see. He's got this year and 2 more. So yeah, Kreider will take this year's first, as Kevin says. I'm all set.
He's on the wrong side of 30, so he's not a long-term option for this team. So I don't know. If it were me running the team, it would all depend on the cost. And if he's not coming cheap, I don't want him.
Yeah, that's really what it boils down to for any deal, honestly, for Sweeney to make right now. Is it something that is going to help this team, as you mentioned? Can they help in the long run, but also in the now? I don't think they're going to try and trade for anybody over the age of 30. I don't think that's their target right now. If you can find someone who's 24, 25, 26, and they have the potential to sign a longer term deal to take them past the age of 30, then that's a different story. But
it has to be somebody in the Pasternak and McAvoy age group.
Almost like when they made the deal for Hampus Lindholm.
Hi, Court. By the way, you guys,
Court, welcome in.
You guys should go check out Court's YouTube channel, where I won't give it away unless Court says I can, but you should go check it out because he's got his Bruins Mount Rushmore up today. So I'm just going to say right now, Court, that I didn't agree with your number 4, and people can go check that out on Court's YouTube page. Bruins Die Hard.
Die Hard. Bruins Die Hard. Definitely go check them out. Court, great friend of the program here. And I actually did not know that he got that video up. I have not been on YouTube much myself today, so I will check that out a little bit later myself. But Court, keep up the great work over there. You do a fantastic job. And as always, you're welcome on the show anytime. Appreciate the pop in to say hi. Hopefully the kiddos doing well and enjoyed their holiday. So with that, back to where were we? We were talking about, what I was saying is they'll probably look to make more of like the kind of deal they made when they got Hampus Lindholm. Fair to say?
Yeah, Hampus Lindholm, Rick Nash, those kinds of deals, but younger than Nash.
Yeah. I mean, I think people forget that Hampus Lindholm is now 30 years old. Like when they traded for him, he was 27? Has he been with the team now for 2 years?
Yeah.
So he was 28.
That's the age group. That's the age you're looking at. Yeah. They should be looking at Pasternak, McAvoy age.
Yeah. That's their current window. McAvoy 27, Pasternak is 28. So, yeah. Court says, I would think number 4 is different for almost everyone. Well, Court, when I go in and take a look, I'll leave a comment for you so that you know that I went in and saw that one. But yeah, I mean, right now there's going to be plenty of time for us to take a look and see who the Bruins could target. I think a better question is, who are you willing to part with to get that kind of player? Because they don't have a lot of assets. And as Kevin says, I don't want them trading my first round pick this year. But
I thought Kevin said he would trade it.
No, he says Kreider will take this year's first. I'm all set. Kevin doesn't want to trade the first.
I thought he meant he would by saying I'm all set. But then again, English is my third language, so.
Yeah, and it is Kevin, so he said it with a burrito in his mouth. Anyway, it is just after 8 o'clock, which I just noticed. So, Dom, any final thoughts as we wrap up another episode of What's Bruin, presented in partnership by our friends over at Ice Shaker? We'll talk about them in a minute.
I think the Bruins need to go out and get another assistant coach. That's the hill I'm going to die on.
A specialty teams coach, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Well, I can't say I disagree with you on that. I wouldn't mind seeing that get taken off of the plate of duties for Joe Sacco and let him focus on the head coaching job now that he has it. Would you be looking to take the interim tag off of him at this point?
No, I would wait till the end of the year.
Okay, I can see that.
And I'll tell you why. What if something happens that somebody, without mentioning any names, becomes available? What happens if coach wants out of Tampa Bay? What happens if
I'll say it, Mike Sullivan.
Well, I don't want to. Okay, you go ahead. What happens if those guys become available and then you've missed the boat by acting too soon?
I totally agree with that sentiment. I would wait till the offseason to offer him the position, see what happens, see what teams fall out of place. The standings are a jumble right now. I mean, hell, just look at the Atlantic Division. We are 2 points behind Florida and Toronto. So I said coming into the season, Boston had a shot to win this division, and they're 2 points out of it. So am I confident based on how they've played? No. Is it impossible? Also, no. So we'll be here with you every step of the way, though. Again, shout out to our friends over at Ice Shaker. Check them out at iceshaker.com. They have sold over 1 million of these bottles already. Cannot recommend them enough. This is actually my second one with them. I had the original one before they got all the Bruins licenses, the NHL licenses, NCAA licenses, all the they got the NFL, NBA, MLB. They got a whole bunch of them now. So, and actually, you can get a customized one. So maybe I'll have to get a What's Bruin one at some point. But for now, the Bees will do for me. Check them out at iceshaker.com. And we'll let Curious Browser get the last word here. Tampa Bay lost to Montreal tonight, 8 up one of those 5 games in hand. Absolutely. Dom, I believe you're the one who mentioned it. Games in hand only matter if you win. So with that, go Bees.